In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make a better Launchpad cover, including tips and tricks on what you should and should not do. Let's get into it. Hello there, my inspirations. My name is InspirAspir, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a good Launchpad cover. Now, I've been a part of the Launchpad community for over 2.5 years now, and in that time I've seen some good and some bad Launchpad covers. So using my experience, I hope to give you some tips and tricks on how you can improve your covers and ultimately just make your Launchpad experiences a little better. So let's get into it. Step 1, find the song that you want to make your Launchpad cover to. Duh. Do a quick search to see if your song has stems publicly available to download. If you can't seem to find anything, that's okay. In fact, I would say that 99% of songs don't have stems publicly available, but that being said, a few choice songs do. The point is, your song may have stems publicly available, and you might not know it unless you look it up. So if they exist, great. If not, no big deal. Step 2, obviously, obtain a copy of the song that you want to make a cover to. Step 3, open a new Ableton Live session and delete one of the audio files. Drag a copy of your song or the stems of the song into your Ableton project. Step 5, make sure your Ableton session has the same BPM as your song. There are a couple ways to do this, but one reliable way to do it is to double click on your song, unclick warp, and then change your Ableton session's BPM to that of your song. So in my case, 155. Step 6, set up your Launchpad for Midi input and output. On one Midi track, change your output to your Launchpad, and make sure you arm it for recording. This Midi track will be used to hold all of your samples. On your second Midi track, make sure the output is also on your Launchpad, and change your monitoring from auto to in. This will be used for your lights. Step 7. On the left side of Ableton, under Instruments, find Instrument Rack and drag it onto your samples Midi track. Then, at the bottom of Ableton, expand your chain list, click Chain, right-click near this orange bar, and hit Map to Macro 1. Then go back to the left side of Ableton, under MIDI Effects, go to MIDI Effect Rack, and drag it onto your Lights MIDI track. Expand your chain list, hit Chain, right-click near the orange bar and hit Map to Macro 1. Step 8. At the top right of Ableton, click this MIDI button, select your chain selector, hold the top right side button on your Launchpad, and while still holding it, press the bottom right side button on your Launchpad. This selects all 8 of your side buttons. Then at the top left of Ableton, where it says Max, click it, type in 7. Now unclick the blue MIDI button and click on your other MIDI track. Click the MIDI button again, and repeat the process. So select chain selector, top right, bottom right, 7, enter. We've just made 8 pages. Step 9, make sure you're in your samples MIDI track. Go to the left side of Ableton, under drums, select a drum rack, and drag it into your instrument rack. Now this is one page of your samples, where each page can contain 64 samples, one for each button on your Launchpad. So rename this page to whatever you want to call it, copy it, paste it, and move the chain 1 over. Repeat this process until you have 8 separate pages. Be sure to name them accordingly, and if you'd like, you can change their color by right-clicking and choosing whatever color you want. Please note, obviously, you might not use all 8 pages, but the option is there, so if you'd like, you may. Step 10, repeat the process for your lights. Make sure you're within your lights MIDI track, go to the left side of Ableton under MIDI Effects, MIDI Effect Rack, and drag that into your currently existing MIDI Effect Rack. Now, we just repeat the process we just did for our samples. So you can name each page accordingly, you can copy, paste it, and move the chains over. Same as before, feel free to rename them and change their colors if desired. Step 11. Now we get into sampling. Zoom in on your Ableton session by moving your mouse here, clicking and moving your mouse down while holding left click. The farther you zoom in, the better. Ultimately, this will allow you to make finer, more precise cuts. Find the parts of the song that you want to chop up. Left click on your audio file wherever you want to make a cut, right click, and select split. Then find the end of that sample wherever you would like it to be, left click, right click, and hit split. Now you've made your first sample, and you can repeat this process for the entirety of your song. One suggestion I have is to make very, very precise cuts. Ultimately, this will help you when it's time to play your cover. Another suggestion I have is to avoid sampling your song to a very easy beat. And by that, I mean don't make a sample every quarter beat. Switch it up every now and then. Add some variety, it looks more impressive. If you only cut up your samples in, let's say, a quarter of a beat, for example, for the entirety of your song, you're more or less just hitting buttons at the pace of a metronome. And that's not impressive at all. In fact, it's really boring. The more work you put into your sampling will create a better Launchpad cover in the end. Once you have your song cut up and sampled, you can drag your samples into your sample MIDI track under your given drum rack. So let's say my page 3, for example, I can drag in my samples wherever I want onto my Launchpad. Throw your samples on your Launchpad in a way that makes it look interesting when you play it, but at the same time is also possible. Don't make it too difficult on yourself to play the given pattern that you created. Don't line up all your samples in a row or just up a column. That doesn't look impressive. I think the goal here is to make something that looks impressive, is a little bit challenging, but is still possible for you to perfect. Step 12. Once all the samples are in your drum racks wherever you want them to be, now is the time for one of the most important tricks. For every sample you've assigned to a button, click on that sample, go to fade in, and just give it a little bit of a fade in, maybe like a 10 millisecond attack. This will prevent any clippings and sharp bursts of noise if you happen to not have been perfect when you sampled your song, and the difference is staggering. Also, for every sample, unclick snap. If you do that for every sample, you'll create a much smoother cover. Step 13. Next, create the lights for your cover. There are so many ways to do this, so I can't really give you any specific tips, but I highly suggest you make something impressive and that matches the feel of your song. Maybe if you'd like, you could create a color theme, or maybe have recurring light effects, but you don't want to be too repetitive. My best suggestion is just to be original and as creative as you can get. Then, after you've made your light effects, make sure that you assign them to your lights MIDI track. Now, this can be done in different ways depending if you're using the MIDI extension device or if you're using MIDI effects, but be sure that you've assigned them to your specific button. Step 14. Practice, practice, practice. Guys, I can't stress this enough. I've seen so many high potential Launchpad covers that were ruined by one bad performance. You do not want to spend all the time making this Launchpad cover only for it to turn out mediocre at best if you don't perform as well as you possibly could. Good Launchpad covers take hundreds and hundreds of takes. And sure, it might be frustrating, but if you're getting annoyed, you can always walk away and come back to it a different day. Never feel like you have to push it out immediately. Step 15. So now that you've practiced and you've got it down, it's time to record. Position your camera over top of your Launchpad, or if you'd like, and be original at any other camera angle, I suppose. Most Launchpad covers are commonly recorded over top. You can either do this by putting a camera on a tripod and pointing it downwards, or some people have gotten really creative by positioning their phones over top of the Launchpad in some way and then just recording that way. Once you have your Launchpad in position, I recommend pointing some light at it. If you happen to have a lamp with some good white light, position it over top of your Launchpad. This will really make all the colors pop. It might sound counterintuitive that adding more light would actually get better colors out of your light, but it actually does work. Essentially, this way it allows your camera to pick up more of the colors and will make your cover look smoother. Perfect your cover. Do not take your first attempt. Even if you think it's perfect, and maybe it is, take a couple of takes. The worst thing that happens is you can always revert back to your original if you think it was the best. Odds are it probably isn't. Step 16. Recording your audio. You can do this a few ways, but one reliable way is to use Ableton's arrangement recording button. Simply press this button, and as long as your samples track is armed for recording, then any input you make on your Launchpad will be recorded. You can then export your samples track as an audio file and then overlay that on top of your performance later on. Step 17. From here you can edit your Launchpad cover to synchronize your audio and video, and you can do some other editing if you'd like. Export your video and upload it and you're good to go. So that's how you make a good Launchpad cover. The main takeaway here is the more time you put into making your cover, the better off you'll be. Put in a lot of time into sampling, put in a lot of time to make impressive light effects, practice, practice, practice your cover, and don't ever take your first attempt. You may have to record yourself hundreds of times, but it's worth it once you get that perfect performance. So that'll do it. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.